So tell me about this carnivore diet.
Sure.
Because I had Sean Baker in here, and he talked to me about it, but he doesn't have any science. There's no, he doesn't have any, real tests or any long-term studies or anything like that. And, I'm a person who believes in balance, and I think that you need phytonutrients, you need plant fiber. I think there's a lot of healthy stuff that you get from plants. I'm a big believer in eating meat, though, but all meat. You guys are doing all meat.
Well, I think
I've modified it.
I think there's some holes in it.
One at a time, boys.
Yeah, I think there's some holes in every diet.
Right.
I think when you go and you make the decision to only eat meat, then some rational thought should come into your head. Maybe when I switch all the way to just meat all the time, maybe there's a possibility I'm going to eat too much meat. And so maybe that would make sense to bring in some fruit and bring in some vegetables just so you're not eating too much meat, for the simple reason vegetables have been shown, and there's, you can get a study to show you anything, but there's a study that's been done on 200,000 people that went on for 14 years, and they studied vegetables. They studied every type of vegetable, and they found that they were more neutral than they were harmful or good for you. They found that fruit was a little bit better for you. And again, you can have any study say anything.
Wait a minute. What is this study?
It's called the Pure Study.
Wait a minute. They said that vegetables are neutral? What does that mean?
They're neutral.
They don't really help you that much.
They weren't necessarily great, and they weren't necessarily bad. I don't know
in comparison to what, though?
I don't know what their standard was for what they were looking for exactly, but the main thing they were looking for was it being protective in terms of your heart. That was the main thing they were looking at. So they found out that saturated fat is protective of your heart. They found out that cholesterol is actually protective of your heart. They found out that salt is now it's all without, you can't take in tons and tons of salt, because then something's going to...
Well, salt can kill you. If you eat a pound of salt, you're dead. Salt's one of those things that's really good for you. It's an essential mineral.
To a certain extent.
But if you take too much of it, you
So
will
I think
die.
any of these things can be done too far. I jumped on a carnivore diet just to give it a shot and to see exactly what it was about.
Why did you do that? Because you talked to Sean Baker?
Yeah, he was on your podcast. I got inspired to do it. He was already doing it. So I was like, all right, let me try it out. I tried it out, got leaner, felt better, and I was like, this is pretty cool.
And why'd you start it?
So I was doing a ketogenic diet for over a year. Lost a lot of weight on that. Was doing great.
You look really good, man. You look very thin and healthy.
I appreciate it.
He looks healthy, doesn't he?
Your face looks healthy.
I still have a long way to go, in my opinion. This is a work in progress, but the reason I did it was really simple. It's a dietary intervention. I went through sobriety, as you know. I was a drug addict and an alcoholic for about 6 years. And when I went through sobriety, that's an intervention. There's something wrong. There's a problem. We need to fix it. So my problem now was arthritis. And I needed something that was like an intervention that would get me from, being arthritic and in pain and not being able to lift to being able to lift. And so some of this might be a placebo effect of me going like, well, I'm on this diet and I feel great and whatever. And so I'm now lifting more. Some of it may be a placebo effect, and that's okay with me if it is, but I feel excellent on this diet, and I think the reason is I'm getting a lot more protein in. I wasn't getting enough protein on keto because I was listening to everybody say, well, it'll knock you out of ketosis if you eat too much protein, and that's what I constantly was being told, but I wasn't muscular. I wasn't being able to put on muscle.
Well, you were constantly testing your blood levels. Were you using a meter?
Yeah, every day about 3 or 4 times. I'm crazy with it because...
What would knock you out of ketosis?
The things that would knock me out of ketosis were just mainly anything with carbohydrates. I wasn't really having too much of a problem with protein because I wasn't eating a lot of protein. But there were things that if I cheated on my diet, for example, of course that would usually kick me out of ketosis. But then I also got to a point where you become so fat adapted that you become what we like to call metabolically flexible. Metabolic flexibility just means you can switch from being a fat burner. I'm mostly a fat burner for the most part because I'm eating high fat. But then if I do eat something with sugar in it, it doesn't really affect me that much because I'm
used to it.
90% going with the fat. So I can kind of move back and forth between those two things. But what I realized on the carnivore diet, when I switched over to carnivore, the whole time I was thinking, man, if I could just have an apple, I would feel so much better. Because just eating this steak, it's killing me and it's driving me crazy.
Well, how's it killing you?
just mentally, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't tough enough to just say, okay, I'll just have steak on a plate. Like
Yeah,
for some
mentally,
reason,
you automatically use intermittent fasting almost because you're like, you don't always have a hamburger in your pocket, or you don't always run through In-N-Out Burger or whatever it might be. But yeah, you end up utilizing some intermittent fasting, and you're like, fuck, man, the only food I have to eat is a hamburger or steak.
That's where I was at, and it was hamburger or steak, and I'm like, well, how about an apple? So I talked to our friend Stan Efferding, who's a bodybuilder, and he's huge, he's
jacked,
and he's also a power lifter, and
51 years old too, and fucking jacked.
One of the smartest guys I know, and he sent me that study that I sent to you with about the fruit. And I don't know if you watched that or not, but basically they did a large scale study with fruit, and they found out that the fruit actually would drive blood glucose down instead of bringing it up when taken with protein like red meat. And so I'm like looking at this going like, well, if it's not going to drive my glucose up, I mean, that'd be the one thing I'm concerned with. Why not have some fruit? And so then I'm talking with Stan about it. He was saying, like, I think fruit is totally fine, and I think you can have as much as you want. And so I sort of switched over.
That sounds crazy, though, because that's sugar. I mean, your body, how is your body not
your body
its blood glucose level?
They've done studies where they've studied fructose. So like everybody thinks fructose is really bad.
Well, they think that because of high fructose corn syrup.
And fructose is really bad when it's outside of fruit.
Right.
But for some reason, fruit has these phytonutrients. It has fiber in it. And those things sort of like protect you from what's going on in the sugar. They actually, there's phytonutrients in fruit, like say an apple. There's certain phytonutrients in there that won't allow your small intestine to like absorb the fat. And so it actually helps you to digest things like red meat that have high fat.
There's cofactors in fruit that help you digest the sugars in them.
And I'm not too sure. I'm not a doctor. I'm a filmmaker. So I start, I'm basically ask a lot of questions to a lot of people and start figuring things out. And then it's trial and error. Right now I'm in the trial and error part, and it seems like it's been working pretty good. So
now, are you getting your blood work done?
Yes. Just got my blood work done from last month, and everything improved from keto to carnivore. I didn't really have any cholesterol issues. I didn't have any. What were my issues?
We've had our blood work done probably 4 or 5 times in the last year or so, I would say.
Yeah.
And not all the numbers are fucking great, but for the most part, it's been pretty healthy. The cholesterol's been good. The triglycerides have been good. This doesn't show up in your blood.
What's not good?
Just it's not in the high range of of what it shows you on the sheet. And then we also had other people
for what?
In terms of like the triglycerides and the cholesterol and stuff like that. That's what you're talking about.
Well, like what you're saying? What's not good?
I'm just saying,
not in a high range. Like
I'm saying everything's been pretty good. Like this last time, I did have my I had one of my markers kind of high.
We both had high C-reactive protein, and we're not sure why. So that's something that we have to like look into.
And what is C-reactive protein?
It's a marker for inflammation, and my C-reactive
specifically of the heart.
Yeah,
not good.
My C-reactive
protein. You both
protein.
had this.
Mine was really high on keto, but then after I went keto to carnivore, it came way, way down. So I don't know where it is right now.
Yeah, I also had a really high. Mine registered really high out of nowhere. It was totally fine with all the blood work I've had done, and the last one I had done, it skyrocketed. People were saying, well, maybe it's because you worked out beforehand, or
right. Well, you have to be. Were you consistent in when you ate, when you got your test done? Were you guys on a fast before
I trained beforehand, so I might have fucked it up.
Oh, you fucked it up for sure.
Yeah,
the way you train, you
that's
should never
what I'm saying.
test yourself after the way you train.
Yeah.
You train like a fucking animal.
The blood work, it's a snapshot in time, and we hear that a lot.
Right.
And I think that that's important to realize and recognize that it's just this one snapshot in time, and we constantly change all the time.
That's particularly important with dietary cholesterol.
Yeah.
I mean, with cholesterol in the blood, the way it registers, if you have a big, fat-filled meal and then go and get a blood test versus you fasting, it's like, how is your body absorbing this is what's really important. How's your body absorbing these essential nutrients, not like what happens right after you eat, because your body knows what to do with that stuff.
My cholesterol was 190, which is good. I mean, they want it to be under 200. But I thought what was really interesting was my HDL went way up from by like 60 points. It went up going from keto to carnivore.
Well, are you eating a lot of fatty cuts like ribeyes and stuff like that?
Mostly
Yeah.
ribeyes. Yeah, I'd say
That's
mostly.
what I like a lot of dietary fat. I like a lot of like meat fat. You know.
I think there's a certain point, right? Because I don't know. Before, when I was doing a ketogenic diet, the fat is kind of free flowing because you make your bulletproof coffees and you're just dumping fat and everything.
MCT
You're
oil.
putting butter on everything.
Right.
But
Might
when
be
you have
overdoing it, yeah.
when you have a steak, what's really nice about having a steak is you're right about 65 to 75% fat already. Like just
you're
out
eating
of, out of-
corn
out of the
fed.
box. Yeah.
You're eating corn-fed beef? Is that what you're
I
eating?
do. I eat both. I think that the difference between the grass-fed and the grain-fed, there really isn't a substantial amount of proof of how much better that is. I do know that grass-fed beef has 5 times the amount of omega-3.
Yeah.
So you always want to pick grass-fed beef when you can. But a lot of people can't afford it. And also, for me, the best meat is at Costco. That's the best tasting meat that you're going to find. I've been everywhere.
Why is Costco better?
It just tastes the best.
I think they
got the
shop
best.
around for the best stuff.
They have the best
Really?
meat.
I
Yeah.
think they
Costco
do,
does.
yeah.
And it's
So
corn.
fuck some like expensive butcher shop.
It's
Go
corn-fed.
to Costco.
I think Costco's outstanding.
Do you know
across the
Costco
board.
is all organic now too? Mm-hmm. You know
That's a weird word though.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
word is so loosely defined.
Sure.
What is organic? Well, we didn't spray it with a fucking chemical right before we gave it to you.
Right.
It's like,
there is a
what is exactly organic?
you have
meat?
to pay to get organic status too.
Right.
That's a weird thing. You know,
Yeah.
you have to pay a lot of money because I remember talking to Bulletproof, and the guy was telling me like you have to Dave Asprey. He's telling me you have to pay money to get recognized as being organic. So
I would
that's
take
some
whatever
sort
that
of-
guy says with a fat grain of salt.
Yeah, sure, I know.
Yeah.
But I'm saying you have to pay to get it to be.
I wonder if that's true.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, it is true.
Is it that you
yeah,
have
my,
to pay? Well, I mean, I'm sure it
Yeah.
costs money to get tested and to make sure that you're
Right.
certified.
Yeah, it says something like that. You have to
But-
pay money for it.
I mean, there has to be some sort of a
gotta
test,
be
and
a
tests cost
regulation,
money.
yeah.
I mean, but when you're looking at the standards, like, what does that mean? It means no antibiotics, no added hormones, right? Is that what it
Right.
means?
I
and
believe
for
so, yeah,
food,
for-
it means no pesticides, right?
Yeah.
I mean, excuse me, for plant,
Fruits and vegetables, yeah.
for fruits and plants. What the one thing that concerns me with grass-fed meat is that you're eating. Well, you're definitely getting a more expensive cut, but you're eating an animal that is eating what it's supposed to eat.
Yeah.
Now, when you're eating like. I've had Wagyu beef and Kobe beef.
Right.
It's delicious.
It's awesome, yeah.
But that thing's dead. That's a dying animal. That's like eating a giant fat guy about to have a heart attack. I mean, all that marbling, that's not supposed to happen. Like, you shoot a bison, like a free-range bison, you get a dark ruby red hunk of meat. I mean, and that's a
I'd have
fucking
to say
vibrant
that
animal.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
But there isn't science to really support that eating the cow that was fed with soy or corn is necessarily way worse. And so I might just be stupid for waiting for that to come out.
It could
but
be worse.
hold on a second. You just said that there's way more omega fatty acids
Yeah,
in grass-fed beef. That's
the-
omega fatty acids are essential
Sure.
for brain development, muscle development. There's so many benefits to those essential fatty acids. And if those are more present in grass-fed meat, wouldn't you just assume that grass-fed meat is more nutritious?
Yeah, I would say that it has more omega 3.
Right.
It might be more nutritious in that particular way.
Right.
But I say, like, you know, is the cost benefit? You know, the other day I went and bought grass-fed meat from Whole Foods, $33.99 a pound for a fillet, $19.99 a pound at Costco for a fillet. The Costco one is so much better. The one from Whole Foods was almost not edible. Like, it didn't taste good.
It's a real tough piece of meat sometimes.
And so
Tough filet?
at Whole Foods, I don't know why they have crappy meat.
for some reason, grass-fed stuff sometimes
it's
a little
super
tougher.
expensive.
Did you get a sponsorship for Costco right before you came here
No,
today?
no.
We did
I
actually
am
nail it.
super suspicious.
No
We nailed it.
sponsorships. But what I'm saying is that I've gone out to a lot of places to try to find what meat I thought tasted
Right.
the best, and you know, so for me, sometimes I have to you have to eat a lot of meat. And if it doesn't
Yeah.
taste that good, you're not going to get through it. So I prefer to have meat that tastes better. I like for grass-fed meat, I like to use grass-fed beef patties because they're a little fattier and they just taste really. Those taste
easier to
fine to
eat,
me,
yeah.
you know. But the grass-fed steaks they don't really taste as good. So I just kind of switch back and forth.
I think these are some of the smaller issues. These aren't the main things that we're really trying to fight. You know, my brother and I, we just took on to do another film, and he and I are doing this one together on nutrition. And we're trying to find out some truths. I mean, we're trying to find out about grass-fed and organic and all these different things. But mainly, we're just trying to figure out how the fuck do we help fight obesity? How do we help fight diabetes? How do we help people gain control of their diet? And I think that's really, truly what we're talking about is control. And you look at something like a ketogenic diet, in my opinion, it's one of the few diets that can really help people with control of their diet because it can help break up the cravings. And that's really ultimately, I think, where our fight is against cravings of all these convenient foods that taste so fucking good.
Well, the cravings
that are in our face
of
all the time.
refined carbohydrates and sugars.
Absolutely.
Those are giant.
Yeah.
And